All right, here we go. I want to extend a warm welcome to all my free-minded friends out there. JR Dukes at your service. We are just now hitting the buttons to go live. Let me just give me 1 second. Let me make sure everything is up and working. I appreciate everybody joining me. Zach, good to have you in the room. I got your comments earlier, by the way, on my last video. I appreciate those comments, and I will respond to everybody's comments as soon as I possibly can. Just so you all know, I generally always respond to individuals who subscribe, people that support the channel, subscribers basically. Them are the first comments that I get around to, and I always try to answer each and every one of your questions because that's what it's all about: community, talking with each other. I think it's really a blessing when you get right down to it that we have technology 2024 to be able to effectively go out into the entire world and have a conversation to learn how to better our lives, understand things better. And of course, that's what my channel is all about. I believe when you understand better, you can live better. And I'm hopeful that the experiences I've acquired during my lifetime can be a benefit to others. That's the only reason I do this. I can assure you, I do not do it for the money, and I do it just because I want to. I think it gives me a feeling that I'm helping people, and I hope that that is what everybody gets from this channel. So give me 1 second, just making sure everything's live. Looks good on X. I don't guess we call it Twitter anymore, but looking good. YouTube, Facebook, and Twitch. Okay, looks like we're doing great. If you haven't done so already, please take a moment and introduce yourself. Let us know where you're from. Again, Zach, it's always a pleasure to have you in the room. Looks like we're starting to fill up. Well, I started to make a little bit of a joke and ask, what should we talk about today? Of course, there's plenty to talk about today. I mean, it's really difficult to get our arms around this Trump verdict. It's really the case, though, that this has been something that's been going on for a very long time. The difference in this particular matter is it's right out in the open for all of us to see. Generally, they don't go after somebody powerful, wealthy like Donald Trump, but they've made an exception in his case. And the reason they've made this exception is the obvious. They know they cannot beat him at the polls, and they don't want to take any chance in not beating him at the poll. So they're doing everything they can to take this man's money, take his reputation, and ultimately take his freedom. And it's my goal in this video, before the video is done, I'm going to share with you my thoughts that might actually surprise you. And the question is my thoughts on, will Donald Trump go to prison? And I think you're going to be surprised by my answer. I hear all the talking heads say one thing. This talking head has an opinion that I think you will find entertaining. And yeah, that's a little bit of a tease, admittedly, but I do want to share the views. All right, Southwest Pennsylvania, my buddy Zach, thanks for being in. And by the way, I've had several of you take the liberty of using my number there on your screen and texting me periodically. I've made many new friends, and I appreciate each and every one of you. It's always a pleasure, like I say in my videos, to be able to have a conversation with each and every one of you. And when you make new friends, that's just an extra bonus. Because let's be honest about it, we can all use more friends in our lives, more people we can talk to and depend on. And I think as we get older, let's just face it, folks, loneliness is a serious issue in the world, specifically in the United States. And I think that YouTube offers us a very interesting platform and a unique opportunity to reach out and make new friends. And at the same time, we all can better our lives, as I just described. So fantastic. By the way, if you have not saw the video I made earlier today, I think you'll find it entertaining. Please be sure to check it out. We're going to touch on that briefly today because I want to point out what I believe is prima facie proof of the fact that this trial of Donald Trump was nothing more than not what I would call a prosecution, but more of a persecution. Now, let's call it what it is. We all know what's going on. We all know what has happened. We know what's transpired. I would say a 2-year-old idiot can figure out what's going on. And folks, it's really sad that we are in this place now to where our country has turned into essentially a kangaroo type of court system, a banana republic. This is the kind of stuff they do in Russia, the kind of stuff you see maybe in China, Venezuela, Ecuador, this type thing. I don't believe that what has happened here today, or I should say this past week, has happened to a G7, maybe a G8 if you count Russia, but definitely not a G7 type country. I think I heard a commentator mention something that maybe in a G20 situation it's happened once or twice, but it's just unbelievable. And I know the word unprecedented is used way too much, but indeed it is unprecedented. And unfortunately, we cannot say that anymore because it is no longer unprecedented. This is the reason why in history, when you look through history, every country falls sooner or later. And it's my humble opinion that when a country falls, one of the main reasons it falls is because of corruption, because of what we just seen in the New York court system. Now, New York is having serious problems with their economy right now. There's a lot of people that simply are not putting capital into New York. They simply don't want to invest or have anything to do with New York. And I understand it. How would you feel about taking a bunch of your money and sink it into New York and knowing that you could fall out of favor with like the likes of Letitia James, or you make somebody mad like the prosecutor, the DA in New York City, Alvin Bragg? I mean, this would be something that I would find extremely hesitant to do, something troubling to do. I'd much rather take my money and go somewhere else. I think it was Kevin O'Leary that I heard make that comment, that he's been investing a lot of his money in the Midwest. And until this situation gets sorted out, that's exactly what I would be looking to do. I will make one more point about this. This will get sorted out sooner or later through the court systems. I don't think it's going to be the New York Court of Appeals that's going to do the right thing here. I just don't. When you look at the Harvey Weinstein case, it was a 5-4 split decision at the New York Supreme Court level. Because, I mean, let's be honest about it. Nobody likes Harvey Weinstein. But the reality is we all need to protect it under law, no matter who we are and no matter who we fall out of favor with. And that's just the realities. And think of it this way. If you're in court and you have a judge that's going to allow in alleged bad acts that you've never been convicted for, never been charged for, and have one person after another say you did ABC, it's not going to look good for you. I mean, it's just that simple. I don't want to see people that are evil or that hurt other people get away with their crimes. But at the same time, we've made a conscious decision as a society that we would rather see a certain amount of people go free than have one innocent person lose their life by sitting in jail. And the way I've always explained it to folks is, let's just say our standard is what we refer to as beyond a reasonable doubt. Now, that doesn't mean any doubt. Let's put it into football terms. I know a lot of us can relate to that. Beyond a reasonable doubt generally means 97%, like the 97-yard line or whatever the number is there. So if 100 people are tried in our system, we would rather have 3 guilty people go free than put them in jail. It's just kind of the way mathematically, statistically, and I will say in theory that it's supposed to work. Okay, let me just check right here and see who we got. Ready. Let's see. They wanted New York City a world stage. Yeah, Zach, I want to mention to you too, like on your comment earlier today, and I appreciate you leaving a comment. When I refer to Alvin Bragg as a hero, and we're going to talk more about that later, I'm using the term, well, I am using it literally, but he's not a hero in the truest sense of the word. He's a hero for Republicans because let's face it, he has single-handedly united the Republican Party. If you think back to when former President Donald Trump first started running for office, it wasn't really a shoo-in that he was going to be elected because he has a lot of people that he rubs the wrong way. Right or wrong, that's the way it is. And you know, on my channel, I tell you the way it is, whether something you want to hear or not hear. You don't have to take my opinion for it. You can make up your own mind, but I will tell you what I think about something, and then you can agree or disagree, or we can just agree to disagree, whatever. But we can still air it out. And again, I don't care if it's a Republican idea or Democrat idea. I don't consider myself either one. I just consider myself a voter. I consider myself an American. I love this country the way I'm sure most of you do. And I really, really want to do everything in my power to help out each and every one of us. And frankly, to what degree I can help our country out. I really think our country is a very special place, a place blessed by God Almighty. There has never been a country like the United States of America. And it's truly my prayer, my hope, that it continues. And as our Constitution says, or preamble says, that it shall not perish from the face of the earth. And I want to do my part to make sure that does not happen. So when you hear me talk about Bragg as a hero, I'm using a hero, and I guess it's literal and metaphoric, and I'm just illustrating the point that this guy, if Donald Trump is elected as the next president, in large part, he probably could thank Alvin Bragg, because he united the Republican Party. And after this outrageous 34 felonious counts that we all know is nothing but a hit job, we can thank him, right? You agree with that? Disagree with that? Put in the comments. I want to know what y'all think. So go ahead and let me know. All right, Pennsylvania Paul, you think he's going to get house arrest? Yeah. Yeah, there's some sick people out there. I'm going to share with you my views here momentarily. I want to watch this one video real quick. This has to do with something that was on The View, and I'm not going to broadcast it live. We're just going to put it in a small screen. They generally have filters here that are kind of sticky, but we'll see how this works. Let's take a quick peek at this. I want to get the right filter. There we go. All right, let's just watch this for a second. I want to make a couple points. I think you might find this interesting.
Well, I had a different question, but it struck me that in the first segment you used the term woke, and you said that woke is what was sort of.
Got Bill Maher here, and he's not necessarily my favorite individual, but he was on The View just the other day, and he is pretty well putting these ladies in their place. I thought it was interesting.
Ruining everything, and I know that you're.
No, I didn't say ruining everything. I said that's why Trump could get reelected.
That's why Trump could get reelected.
Yeah.
So I just, the term woke has been, in my view, co-opted by the right and weaponized and bastardized. And so I was surprised to hear you use the term, because historically, as you know, because I think you're quite brilliant, that woke is a word used by the Black community to note that we must be aware of social injustices.
But words
and
migrate.
So why is that a bad thing?
It's not a bad thing, and originally that was absolutely a great thing. Alert to injustice. Who's not for that? But words do migrate. Now, I'll use.
That was pretty well it on that particular subject that I wanted to go over. I just thought it was interesting. You had someone like Bill Maher, who is there in the View studio room, and he pretty well was ripping into them about, if you continue doing what you're doing, ladies, you're going to see President Donald Trump elected. The way that this lawfare is working out, kind of the same thing we talk about on this channel all the time. I don't know if you agree or not, but I can honestly see that as being something that could go forward. Now, let's go ahead and jump in the next little topic here. Let's drill down on this trial of President Trump. So I want to share something I looked up on a website that is the United States Attorney's Office. Let me go ahead and share my screen with you real quick. And we're just going to take a quick peek at this here. Here we go. Boom. Okay. Now, this, I'm going to see if I'll blow this up just a little bit for you. All right. Now, we all know Michael Cohen, the AKA the Fixer, Trump's ex-attorney, whatever you want to call this loser, right? This guy here, this is what he has been convicted of, according to the Justice Department, the Department of DOJ, the feds, all right? This was a press release that they released back in 2018, and I just want to hit a few highlights here. Michael Cohen pleads guilty in Manhattan federal court to 8 counts, including criminal tax evasion and campaign finance violations. Plea, it says, just I'm going to hit the highlights again. Plea follows filing of 8-count criminal information, alleged concealment of more than $4 million in unreported income, $280,000 in unlawful campaign contributions. And remember, during the trial, he admitted to a felony that is higher than what former President Donald Trump committed, allegedly, the Class E, which is the lowest misdemeanor in the state of New York. Michael Cohen admitted on the stand that he stole, what was it, $65,000, something around that figure, which of course would be a much, much higher felony depending on how they charged him, if they were going to charge him. And of course, that wasn't going to be the case. It says right here that this is what he was convicted of. All right. False statements to a bank. In 2010, Cohen, through companies he controlled, executed a $6.4 million promissory note with the bank. You cannot lie on those federal forms. If you do, you can end up in this type of situation. He was also convicted, as you see here, campaign finance violations. And they go into it right here. I'm not going to drill deep into this. I wanted just to hit the high notes of this right here. But here are the charges here. Counts 1 through 5 have to do with tax evasion. He received the maximum prison sentence would have been 5 years in prison. Count 6 was making false statements to a federally insured bank. That's what we just talked about. Up to 30 years in prison for that. Unbelievable. Count 7, causing an unlawful corporate contribution, 5 years in prison. And finally, count 8, making an excessive campaign contribution, 5 years in prison. Some of these charges, in my opinion, are just a little bit off the rocker, if you know what I'm saying. But folks, again, it's always been that way, and that's all the more reason I'm glad we talk about the legal system and how to stay out of trouble. Because if the government wants you, I can assure you, none of us live lives that they cannot find a crime against. I forgot who it was that said it. Someone said that if you show me the man, I'll find the crime, or words to that effect. There's a book out there, I think it's called 3 Felonies a Day, and the author of that book here in the United States points out what I just said. Do you know technically in the law books, UCS, whatever, it is a crime to write a check for less than 99 cents? These are the kind of laws and rules that I'm talking about that affect our lives day to day. And we have to be very, very careful when we live our daily lives. I mean, it's just that simple. You have to be careful. Now, this next video here, I found, it comes from MAGA War Room. Let's take a quick peek at this. This has sound, and I don't know if you've seen this or not, but I thought it was interesting. Let's take a quick listen to this here.
Thank you for joining us here today. Earlier this afternoon, Donald Trump was arraigned by a Manhattan grand jury on 34 felony counts.
This case is an abomination. You know, it's obviously political. 7 years to try to come up with this case. They're just wrong on the law.
The only crime that Donald Trump is being prosecuted for is the crime of running for president.
Political persecution at the highest level.
They've quite frankly given up on trying to beat him at the polls. Either going to steal it or stop it by law firm.
A Democrat prosecutor elected on a Get Trump platform.
What's going on here is a disgusting disgrace. It is war on Trump, it is war on the Republican Party, and it is a war on the Republic.
This case is the weakest case I've seen in 60 years of teaching, practicing, and writing about criminal law.
I doubt the New York indictment would have been brought against a defendant whose name was not Donald Trump.
This judge, I mean, you don't need a prosecutor if you have a judge like this. This judge is not on the level.
It's a terrible case, but the judge has been pretty much a rubber stamp on everything that Bragg has wanted to do.
They're perverting the system of justice. You know, that's where the danger lies. The corruption and subversion of our institutions by the left.
This is the Democrats' entire strategy, to confine President Trump to a dirty criminal courtroom and keep him off the campaign trail where he can bring his winning message to voters across this country.
New York has become a legal banana republic. They are so determined to get Donald Trump.
Look, convicting Donald Trump, that's all they have.
I think they have no cards, and they're depending upon Trump getting convicted.
That Trump train doesn't show any signs of slowing down.
The only verdict that matters is the verdict at the ballot box.
It's incredible, ain't it? That's the world we live in right now. That's the way the Democrats want to play this out, which of course is extremely unfortunate. It's damaging to our country. I don't know how these people can claim that they love America and yet they engage in this type of nonsense. I did what checking I could as far as the records are concerned, and I could not find anybody that is even close to President Trump as far as his behaviors, his mannerism, his record, and find any type of record where somebody was prosecuted, persecuted, depending on your perspective, pertaining to mislabeling business records that many years after the fact, and then where they used campaign finance law. By the way, campaign finance laws are supposed to be limited strictly, or I should say prosecuted strictly by the federal government, specifically the Department of Justice, which is part, or I should say controls the Federal Election Commission. Those are supposed to be the folks by statute that prosecutes this case. And I'm not sure if that would actually be a ground to appeal on, but I sure would be doing that if I could. So here's a quick clip of President Trump. And you know, you have to admit, considering he was coming out of court right after all this was going on, I think his demeanor was pretty good. But let's listen into this a second here and hear what his response was. This is right after the verdict.
This was a disgrace. This was a rigged trial by a conflicted judge who was corrupt. It's a rigged trial, a disgrace. They wouldn't give us a venue change. We were at 5% or 6% in this district, in this area. This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people. And they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here. You have a Soros-backed DA, and the whole thing. We didn't do a thing wrong. I'm a very innocent man, and it's okay. I'm fighting for our country. I'm fighting for our Constitution. Our whole country is being rigged right now. This was done by the Biden administration in order to wound or hurt an opponent, a political opponent. And I think it's just a disgrace. And we'll keep fighting. We'll fight till the end, and we'll win, because our country's gone to hell. We don't have the same country anymore. We have a divided mess. We're a nation in decline, serious decline. Millions and millions of people pouring into our country right now from prisons and from mental institutions, terrorists, and they're taking over our country. We have a country that's in big trouble. But this was a rigged decision right from day one, with a conflicted judge who should have never been allowed to try this case, never. And we will fight for our Constitution. This is long from over. Thank you very much.
Imagine that you are persecuted like this in a court of law. First of all, I think he looks pretty well calm, collected, under control, considering at that time he made that video what just happened. The humiliation this man has endured. I don't know if you have read, looked up, whatever, the comments made by Stormy Daniels on the stand for the world to hear. And this Judge Merchan, allowed all of this to come in, yet on the other hand, would not allow President Trump to put on his own witnesses that would testify as to whether or not he actually broke campaign finance laws or not. This guy, remember this guy? This guy was the head, or at least the former head of the Federal Election Commission. And he wouldn't let this guy speak. He technically would allow the guy to come in, but he restricted his testimony so tightly it would not have been any reason to bring him in. You have the alleged porn star on the stand, and this judge allows her to graphically detail all the illicit sexual details. And you can imagine what she was talking about. If you are interested, you can look it up yourself online. But I'm just telling you, it's just sad, sickens me, and it is what it is. But again, remember, the name of the game wasn't necessarily to give this guy a fair and honest trial. The entire situation was solely and completely about embarrassing him. I mean, I really don't think you can make it any clearer than that. It was all about humiliation and trying to create doubt in voters' minds as to whether or not we should give this guy another chance to be the president. I don't think that it's too difficult to figure out. Let's take a look at this right here. This is kind of funny, I thought. Something I thought was interesting. I don't know if you've seen it or not. Let me know in the comments. Of course, you got President Trump here on an eagle. And you got Joe Biden right there. I just thought that would be a little bit of a mood chaser, at least a good place to interject. All right, I want to switch gears again. I don't want to go too fast. If anybody has any questions or comments, please put them in the comment below. If you want to join me live, let me know. I'll put a link in. And matter of fact, I'll go ahead and drop a link just for good measure. All you need to have is a microphone and a computer. Well, you don't have to have a computer. They have a app, what's called a guest app. You can just download the app directly off your phone. I know it works fantastic on an Apple device, but if you're interested, go ahead and just click on this link and you are welcome to join me live on the air. Now, let's drill down into the meat of what I want to talk about today. And this has to do with what I think is pretty obvious proof that this was nothing but some kind of elaborate collaboration between all sorts of individuals, specifically the Joe Biden administration and his cronies. And the point I'm trying to make, it's so confusing on these charges. People don't understand what the charges are. Donald Trump did not even know what the charges are before he went to trial. Allegedly, they were laid out in the conclusion, the prosecution's closing statements. Have you ever heard of a case where you didn't know what you're being charged with until the end of the trial? I've never heard of such a thing. You're supposed to get something called a bill of particulars when you are brought into court on a criminal matter, and the bill of particulars essentially tells you the particulars of what you're charged with. How can you put a defense if you don't know exactly what your crime is or what your alleged crimes are that they're charging you with? I mean, it's so wrong on so many levels. But I want to show you two different individuals that are supposed to be experts, or at least know what they're talking about, and they don't know what they're talking about. So let's drill down on this, because we have definitely visited often on these subjects, and I want you to hear. Now, this is Dan Abrams. You may recognize him from that new cop show. I think it's called On Patrol Live. And then, of course, we all know Megan Kelly. We watch her on this program once in a while. Just listen to a brief section of this right here. And this is Dan Abrams trying to explain what Donald Trump was convicted of. So let's listen in for a second.
Reimbursing him, though he denied that on the stand. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing that. I think you pay your lawyer money because he outlaid money for you. You could easily classify that as a legal expense.
No matter what it's for, right? Even if it's illegal conduct, you can just put it's an legal expense, right?
This wasn't illegal. There's nothing illegal about paying hush money for an NDA. It's done
There's not.
all
But
the
when
time.
you're doing it to protect your campaign, it is. That's
No.
the difference.
No, he's just flat wrong about that. You're allowed to influence an election. Candidates do it every single day of their campaign. We all, if you're a candidate, every candidate does things, commits actions, I guess, to try to further the campaign, to persuade voters to vote for them.
Oh, so, what law are you citing, Dan?
Campaign finance laws. You're not allowed to give
Wrong.
the.
You don't know what you're talking
What are you
about.
talking?
You're wrong.
Explain to me.
Let me
then.
explain to you.
Tell me what I'm
Let me
getting
explain
wrong.
to you.
Tell me what I'm getting wrong. When you're spending
Campaign finance law will
$130,000,
I'll explain.
Go ahead.
I get it, because you're saying that there are limits to the campaign contributions somebody could make, and this has exceeded them, and then they hit it. I understand. That's his theory. However, this has been wrong from the start.
Yeah.
It does not amount to a campaign contribution if it is the kind of payment that could ever be made outside of the campaign
That's not the
context.
standard. The standard is
Yes, it is.
substantiality. It's not. It's
No,
substantiality.
it's not.
Yes, it is.
You're wrong.
Okay.
No, it's
Well,
not.
I guess we're going
You're
to have to
wrong.
agree to
There's been Supreme Court precedent on this. Talk to Brad Smith, who was the FEC commissioner.
Court after court
You're
that
wrong.
the standard
You're
is
wrong.
substantiality. All right. Thank you for
No,
watching.
he's completely wrong, and I'm going to show you why he's wrong. Remember, he was talking about substantiality is the criteria for, or allegedly the criteria as far as deciding as to whether or not there was a campaign violation of some sort. And remember, we have talked about this extensively on this particular channel because, folks, it is confusing. Let's call it what it is. It's extremely confusing. As I should say, it's extremely confusing as far as trying to figure out what the campaign finance laws are. I mean, it just is. It's an extremely confusing subject, and the rules are sometimes unable to be determined. Sometimes you have to go to the FEC and ask for an opinion on something. But you heard Dan Abrams. He's an attorney. He's supposed to be this big shot, and he's on Good Morning America all the time as an alleged expert witness. He said substantiality is the criteria. Well, I pulled this up out of what did I use? I used Chat GPT, and I was asking to verify what I already know. And let's just read a brief section. It's when determining whether a payment is classified as a campaign expense or personal expense under United States campaign finance law, the standard generally involves assessing the purpose of the expense. The key question is whether the expense would exist irrespective of the candidate's campaign. Boom. And there are two primary considerations. Would the expense exist if the candidate weren't running for office? We have talked about this in depth. And then here's what Dan was saying: substantiality. While not the primary criterion, the substantiality of the expense can be considered when evaluating his necessity and connection to the campaign. Now, you can consider it, but it's not the primary consideration. The bottom line here, and we'll go to the bottom line, the conclusion, is you have to look at the expense and you have to ask yourself, would this expense exist if I wasn't running as a candidate? If it would exist, then it's a personal expense. If it would not exist, then it's a campaign expense. That's generally the accepted rules pertaining to the law. I mean, it's just that simple. In Donald Trump's case, he had this expense paying basically for an NDA with Stormy Daniels to keep quiet. The president said his primary reason was to keep it from his wife, which sounds perfectly reasonable, and he classified it as a personal expense. He's facing he's been convicted on 34 felonies because allegedly he classified it as a personal expense versus a campaign expense. Can you imagine, had he classified it as a campaign expense, they would be on top of him even faster and harsher, because they would have said something like this: oh, ladies and gentlemen, he took your money that you gave his campaign to run for office and he spent it on a porn star. Your money went to a porn star, and they would have indicted him much quicker. It's really just that simple. And I don't know about you, I just find it absolutely outrageous. Now, let's bounce back to this other video, and here's another so-called expert. I just want to play a little bit of this. This pertains to her. Supposedly, she's real happy that Donald Trump's in trouble, right? Blah, blah, blah. And let's just see if she knows what she's talking about, and I'll give you a quick clue. She does not, but we'll go ahead and listen to this for just a second. Here we go.
Well, let's just ask quickly before I go to Kevin. Francesca, just on that point, what crime did Trump commit?
It was financial crimes. It was white collar crimes. That is exactly what they charged him. He was convicted on.
What was the crime?
It's New York state law.
I understand. What was the crime?
She doesn't know.
Francesca, I don't even like it. It is hang on, Mark. He just got convicted on 34 counts.
Francesca, what was the crime?
Of like cooking the actual books.
What was the crime?
You are not allowed. So you are not allowed to use your own financial, like your own money, to pay off somebody, and then he logged it as something different. He logged it as just a regular payment, but he was actually paying off this porn star to keep quiet, which if he hadn't been running
another
what was the crime?
It is new.
She doesn't know.
I don't even like it. It is
hang on.
So she doesn't have any clue, folks. That's the bottom line. She later in the break, if you look at my video earlier that I made about this, they have a break. She gets on Google, types in what was the crime, starts reading a little bit about it, and she tries to recoup, but of course she's called out on it. Again, just another one of these liberals trying to act like justice was served and that this was the right thing to do and that justice prevailed. And I mean, it's just sad and it's shocking. But here's some good news. Just before I went on air, I heard that I believe it's just over $200 million has been raised by the Trump campaign since the verdict, which of course I think is poetic, sweet justice. But let's go ahead and hear just a little bit of this right here.
Eric Trump about the historic donations on Sunday Morning Futures. Watch. What have you seen in the way of money raising? I spoke with President Trump yesterday. He said it's nearly $200 million. That is astounding. Is that number correct? Where does that number come from?
Well, this might be a little inside information, but as I was leaving my house about 37 seconds ago, I asked my wife, what are we up to now? And she said, just in terms of small dollar, we're well over $70 million. This is $21 donations, $43 donations, right? Small dollar donations. If you add the large dollar donations to it, you're over 200 million, but you're over $70 million. And by the way,
yeah, you're exactly correct on that, Zach. That's exactly the way these prosecutors will do this type of nonsense. They'll go ahead and let some child pornographer guy, whatever, they will go ahead and they'll reduce everything as one count. And then for former President Donald Trump, the reason there's 34 counts, if y'all don't know, it's what Zach just pointed out. Each check that he wrote to reimburse Michael Cohen, they considered an extra count and punishable by 4 years imprisonment on each account. Absolutely outrageous. Now, I want to get into the question as to whether or not former President Donald Trump will be sentenced to prison. Now, we know exactly what's going on, and we know what kind of judge he's facing. His daughter, of course, is a Democratic operative. I want to talk more about that in a second. I just want to listen to a tad bit of Alan Dershowitz. I know he's not necessarily our favorite individual, but he has a fair mind, in my opinion, when it comes to justice and making sure people are treated equally. Let's just have a little sampling. And one last thing, too, he's actually thinking about voting for President Trump this year, if you can believe that. Alan Dershowitz voting for former President Donald Trump. It almost doesn't even seem real, but let's take a quick listen.
Andrew Jackson didn't accept the results of his election, really. There have been others who've complained, Tilden Hayes, about the results of their elections. Now, that's the one thing I just don't want to see happen. I want to see this next election be determinative, to have no one have an opportunity to challenge it in any way. As you know, I believe there should be an election commission that determines the outcomes of elections, but unlike England, Israel, many other countries which have election commissions, we don't have one in the United States, so it goes to the courts. And so there'd be litigation up and down the line, undo the election, have a re-election now that we know that the conviction was invalid. I don't think any of that would happen, but there is a real prospect that we could have a situation where Trump loses and then the conviction is reversed, and we'll see what happens with the other convictions too, because by that time there might be trials in the Florida case, that's the classified material case, in the two cases involving January 6th, etc., the Washington, D.C. case and the Forney Willis case in Fulton County. We could see convictions or acquittals in any of those cases. D.C., it's going to be a conviction. There's no doubt about that. D.C. is like New York on steroids. An even higher percentage of voters in D.C. and likely jurors will have been people who hate Donald Trump and don't want to see him elected, and they'll convict him of anything. Fulton County, similarly, Florida, not so much. But there are now efforts to try to get rid of the Florida judge. The Democrats are now making some of the same arguments that they objected to and Republicans made about the judge. There's a tremendous amount of hypocrisy.
Well, the bottom line with Dershowitz is you can hear him talking about how unfair the entire system is. And for the most part, I agree with him. I will tell you this, good news and bad news. Here's the bad news, and I'm going to tell you exactly what I think right now as far as will former President Donald Trump go to prison. And remember, I was one of the few talking heads, so to speak, that was saying that he was going to be found guilty. I'm sure this is one of these things I didn't want to be right about. But I'm here to tell you, I think this judge is going to sentence him to prison. Honestly, I do. I don't know how it's going to work out. They have, I believe it was Dershowitz was talking about, he may sentence him to something like 2 years in prison, but then suspend it, and it's kind of hanging over the president's head, and that's a real devious thing to do. I honestly think he's going to give the president some kind of jail time. I don't know exactly how long it will be, but I'm absolutely certain that that's going to happen. I hope this is something that I am wrong about. Now, if he sentences him to prison, like I said he's going to, I am very certain the United States Supreme Court or one of the appellate levels will immediately stay that decision pending pending this season, this political presidential election going forward, because obviously that would impede and impair the election greatly. But folks, that's exactly what I think is going to happen. I don't see how you cannot. Tell me of a defendant that has 34 felony convictions, has been fined 9 times by the judge, probably 10, because he's clearly, obviously broken the so-called gag order that, believe it or not, he's still under this outrageous gag order. I don't know how you don't sentence a guy like that. He's threatening him with jail. 34 felonies, found guilty by a jury. This judge has all the cover he needs to do what he's been wanting to do from day one. And Zach, is just like you pointed out, this guy here has a interesting history. And folks in New York, when you are assigned a judge, it's supposed to be like a lottery system. I forgot who it was I was talking to, but the fact that Merchant is the judge, I believe he's the judge for the guy that's in Rikers right now, that worked for Donald Trump. I forgot the accountant's name. He's 70-some years old. He's in Rikers right now, allegedly for another false statement of some sort. You have a judge that has a Democratic operative as a daughter, the one that's raised $93 million plus for Democratic causes, and her current client list include, but not limited to, President Joe Biden, Vice President Kamala Harris, and our favorite Adam Schiff. And we all know what President Trump calls Adam Schiff, as I like to point out most of the time. This lawfare is really, really sad, and I hope that our politicians, our leaders, find a way to stop it, because it's not funny. I don't like it. Even back when President Trump at his campaign rallies were shouting to lock Hillary Clinton up, the lock her up stuff, it's funny, no doubt about it. But as he pointed out in one of his recent campaign speeches, he never actually prosecuted her and put her in jail. And I think that's a very valid point. I don't even like what's going on with Hunter Biden right now. And as Zach's pointed out, the prison might be likely. Yeah. I think that's, you know what, the Hunter situation versus what happened to Donald Trump, I think Hunter has a decent chance of a jury acquittal. What we call a jury nullification. We have depended on the jury system in our country to be that safeguard against prosecutors getting carried away, or the government getting carried away. And I've heard a lot of talking heads again say, oh, we should not hold the jury responsible because they just did what the judge led them to. And on some level, that's correct, but I hold the jury responsible. They were supposed to stand up, see through what's going on, and put a stop to it. Instead, they're all Democrats. After all, it's out of New York City. We're supposed to have a jury of our peers. Can anybody honestly look with a straight face and say Donald Trump got a fair trial of a jury of his peers with witnesses that could defend him? No, the answer is no all across the board. The man didn't even know the charges he was facing. Absolutely, completely outrageous, with a conflicted, corrupt judge with a daughter in the position that she's in. This is a judge that's donated to President Biden. Although it's a small amount, it still gives the appearance of a conflict. And we all know this lottery system was a joke. All of these cases were somehow magically awarded to Judge Merchant. He's essentially the hatchet man for the Democrats, these woke Democrats. And don't be under no illusions that somehow Joe Biden and his administration is not connected to this. That's a complete lie. It's complete garbage. The number 3 man in the Department of Justice, his last name was like Costello or whatever. He was one of the lead prosecutors that went over to Letitia James's office that helped hammer former President Donald Trump in front of Judge Engoron. And when that was completed, he went over and started working for Alvin Bragg. What are the chances, right? What are the chances? We know what's going on. You know what's going on. I know what's going on. And it's a shame. But I wanted to make one other point. In relation to Hunter Biden, I think there's a decent chance of a jury nullification, because it is a highly Democratic area there in Delaware. They all know what's going on. And even if he is convicted, do you think President Joe Biden is going to allow his son to go to jail? Absolutely not. And in fairness to Hunter Biden, again, I told you, I call it like I see it. Do you know when the last time the Department of Justice prosecuted somebody for allegedly lying on an application for a gun? I don't either. It's just rare. We used to say it's as rare as hen's teeth, and it is. It's just extremely rare. You don't see these type of prosecutions, but in Hunter Biden's situation, they're prosecuting. And if his name was Joe Blow, he wouldn't have been prosecuted. You know that, and I know that. Now, don't get me wrong. I get that there's a sense of justice because of what has happened to President Donald Trump. I get that as a form of retribution, retaliation. But I'm telling you, ladies and gentlemen, it has to stop. It's not good for our country. It's pure evil. It's of the devil. I can assure you of that. Our politicians need to wake up and stop this before it's too late. We have a country like Iran that's on the verge of having nuclear weapons. We have a world with wars all over the place, all kinds of problems with our own economies, deficits through the roof right now, and we are all fighting, trying to throw one another in jail. It's just ridiculous, and it has to stop. You agree or disagree with me? Put it in the comments below. I know we met today a little bit earlier than normal, and I had no choice. I got other things going on this evening. I realize most people are still at work and they can't join us at this hour. In the future, I plan on starting back more regularly in the little bit later evening time. I know people are starting to file in right now, but the good news is you can always catch it on rerun under the live feed on the account. So, all right, we're going to wrap it up here and land the plane at this point. If you need me, you got my contact information. Please comment, share, subscribe. I enjoyed having you here with me today. I always say keep that mind free. Never give up. Till next time, my friends, I am J.R. Dukes.